Consuelo Vanderbilt was worth more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. She was 19. She was beautiful. She was in love with a man who loved her back, an American man, rich, handsome, from a good family. They wanted to get married. Her mother said no. Instead, Consuelo was locked in her bedroom. Her mother faked a terminal illness. The engagement was destroyed. And Consuelo was forced to marry a British duke she'd never loved, a man who would cheat on her openly for the next 26 years. The price for this arrangement, $85 million in today's money, for a title, for a single word, Duchess. This wasn't an isolated tragedy. This happened over 500 times between the richest families in America and the brokest aristocrats in Europe. Mothers did this to their daughters deliberately. Billions of dollars were transferred. Empires were saved. And here's the part that changes everything. The women won. Not the way you think. Not in any way that makes sense if you believe people marry for love or happiness or partnership. But they won. By the end of this, you're going to understand why your Instagram feed, your dating app preferences, and every power couple you follow are running the exact same transaction. You just didn't know you were paying the price. This is the story of the dollar princesses. And it's the story of what women actually want when they have everything. Let's go back to where it started. New York City, 1890s. You're the richest girl in America, and you're not allowed at the party. Your father owns the railroads. Literally. The Vanderbilts control more wealth than most countries. You live in a mansion that costs $10 million, more than the GDP of some nations. You wear gowns designed in Paris. You have servants. You have everything, except the one thing that matters. Caroline Astor won't let you in. See, Caroline Astor runs something called the 400. That's how many people could fit in her ballroom, and those were the only people who mattered in New York society. Old money, Dutch lineage, families who'd been rich so long they'd forgotten what work looked like, and they had a rule. New money doesn't count. Didn't matter if your father built the infrastructure of America. Didn't matter if you could buy Caroline Astor's house 10 times over. Ward McAllister, her right-hand man, the gatekeeper, said it out loud. New money smells. Alva Vanderbilt knew this personally. She built a marble palace, the most expensive private residence in America at the time, specifically to force her way in. Through parties that made Astor's look like church socials. Nothing. 0 invitations. 0 acceptance. The doors stayed closed. So Alva did something genius and petty and brilliant. She threw a costume ball and invited everyone except Astor's daughter. Made it the event of the century. And Caroline Astor had to come begging, literally begging, to get her own daughter an invitation. Alva won that battle. But here's the thing. She still lost the war, because even after that humiliation, even after forcing Astor to bend, the Vanderbilts were still new money. Still outsiders, still vulgar. The acceptance rate for industrial families in Knickerbocker society. 0%. You could own the world and still be nobody where it counted. Now, if you're Alva Vanderbilt, you've got a problem. You've got all this money. You've got a beautiful daughter. And you've got nowhere to go. But 3,000 miles away, there's a solution. London. See, while American tycoons were building empires, British aristocrats were going broke. The agricultural depression of the 1870s destroyed their income. Death duties, inheritance taxes, were bleeding estates dry. Ancient families were selling furniture just to pay servants. Dukes were living in crumbling castles they couldn't afford to heat. But they had something Americans didn't. Titles. Not money. Not power. Just words. Duke, Earl, Marquess, Duchess. And those words meant everything. So a market emerged. An actual market. There was a book titled Americans, published like a catalogue from 1890 to 1915. Inside, lists of eligible British nobles with their ranks, their estates, and their debts. On the other side, American heiresses with their fortunes and their fathers' industries. The header literally said, "Ancient coronets for new money." Matchmakers set up shop. Lady Paget, an American who'd married into British aristocracy, started charging fees to broker introductions. She'd take American girls to London for the season, a series of balls and events designed explicitly for marriage hunting. And the math was simple. British nobles needed cash to save their estates. American heiresses needed titles to bypass Knickerbocker snobbery. 1/3 of the British House of Lords would eventually marry American money. Here's what's important to understand. These families had options. Consuelo Vanderbilt could have married any number of wealthy American men. In fact, she wanted to marry an American. Winthrop Rutherford, handsome, rich, from a good family, totally in love with her. But Alva said no. Not because he was poor, not because he was cruel or unsuitable, because he didn't have a title. In her letters, archived letters you can still read, Alva wrote this to her daughter: "No American can give you what a duke offers, position in history. Not security, not love, not partnership. Position in history. A word. A rank. A slot in an invisible hierarchy that you can't spend, can't eat, can't hold." And she was willing to destroy her daughter's life to get it. Let me show you what $85 million bought. It's 1895. Consuelo is 18 years old. She's in love with Winthrop Rutherford. They're secretly engaged. Alva find out. What happens next is documented in Consuelo's own memoir, The Glitter and the Gold, published in 1953, decades after the fact, when she could finally tell the truth. Alva doesn't yell. She doesn't argue. She locks Consuelo in her bedroom, then she stages a medical emergency, claims she's dying of a heart condition, brings in doctors, makes Consuelo believe that refusing this marriage will literally kill her mother. She breaks up the engagement to Winthrop personally, sends him away, tells Consuelo he's abandoned her. And then she parades the Duke of Marlborough in front of her broken daughter and says, "This is your future." Consuelo cried through the entire wedding ceremony. Everyone saw it. Nobody stopped it. The Duke of Marlborough wasn't a bad person, necessarily. He was just broke and bored, and aristocratic in a way that made American emotions seem vulgar. He needed money. Specifically, he needed $2.5 million, that's $85 million today, to restore Blenheim Palace, the ancestral estate that was literally crumbling around him. The marriage contract was explicit. The money went into a trust. It could only be used for Blenheim restoration. Consuelo got veto power over mortgages, but that was it. The Duke got access to Vanderbilt railroad stock. Consuelo got a title, Duchess of Marlborough. That was the trade, and Consuelo wasn't alone. Over the next 2 decades, this pattern repeated hundreds of times. Mary Leiter, daughter of a Chicago department store magnate, married Lord Curzon and became Vicereine of India. Her dowry funded British imperial administration. Nancy Astor, yes, from that Astor family, married Waldorf Astor and became Viscountess Astor. She later became the first woman to sit in British Parliament. Jenny Jerome married Lord Randolph Churchill. Their son, Winston Churchill. The pattern was always the same: American money, British titles. The heiresses' mothers negotiated like corporate lawyers. They had terms, they had clauses, they had marriage settlements that read like business contracts. Historians estimate the total wealth transfer at somewhere between $6 and $25 billion in today's money. These dowries saved estates. They funded infrastructure. They covered gambling debts. They paid for mistresses. And here's the critical detail. In 60 to 80% of documented cases, the mothers forced it. Not encouraged, not suggested, forced. Room locking, fake illnesses, destroying prior engagements, cutting off contact with men the daughters actually loved. Frances Work did it to her daughter. Alva Belmont's mother did it to him. It was the norm, not the exception, because to these mothers, titles weren't just status symbols. They were the only currency that mattered. Alva Vanderbilt said it explicitly in interviews later. "I forced my daughter to marry the Duke. I've always had absolute power over my daughter." She wasn't ashamed. She was proud. So Consuelo Vanderbilt became the Duchess of Marlborough, and she wanted to die. This is where the fairy tale is supposed to start, right? The poor American girl gets the title, gets the palace, gets the prestige. Instead, she got 26 years of hell. The cultural clash was immediate and total. American heiresses were raised to be confident, outgoing, expressive. They ran their father's social calendars. They threw parties. They talked to people. British aristocracy required the exact opposite. There were rules, endless rules. Who you could speak to, how you curtsied, where you sat at dinner based on rank, what you could wear, how loud you could laugh, which was, ideally, not at all. Consuelo describes Blenheim Palace dinner parties as icy interrogations. She had a nasal American accent that the British mocked. Her direct way of speaking was considered rude. Her expensive French gowns were seen as too much, vulgar American ostentation. They called her a dollar princess. It wasn't a compliment. And her husband? The Duke had affairs. Openly. From the beginning. That was normal for aristocratic marriages. Emotional connection wasn't the point. The point was heirs and estates. Consuelo had 2 sons. That was her job. After that, the Duke largely ignored her. She wrote in her memoir about suicidal thoughts, about feeling trapped in ghostly corridors, about the hollow shell of prestige that her mother had bought for her. And she wasn't unique. 50 to 70% of these marriages featured documented infidelity or lovelessness. 25 to 35% ended in divorce or annulment, way higher than the era's average of 10 to 15%. But here's where it gets interesting. When these marriages fell apart, the women kept the titles. Consuelo divorced the Duke in 1921, after 26 years. She walked away from Blenheim. She walked away from the marriage. But she kept Duchess of Marlborough, used it for the rest of her life. Nancy Astor kept her title even through political battles. Mary Curzon kept hers. When these women returned to America, they used their British ranks to dominate the exact social circles that had rejected them. 80% of them successfully re-entered New York high society, not as the daughters of industrialists, but as duchesses and countesses who outranked everyone. Remember Alva's revenge ball, the one where she forced Caroline Astor to beg for her daughter's invitation. That was nothing compared to this. Because now, Alva's daughter was a duchess, permanently, unassailably, higher than anyone in New York could ever claim to be. The title stuck, even when the marriages didn't. And 85% of these titles passed to the next generation. Consuelo's sons inherited the Marlborough dukedom. Jenny Jerome's son became Winston Churchill. Nancy Astor's descendants are still in British politics. The mothers won the long game. To understand this, you need to understand what a woman's brain is actually optimizing for. Evolution doesn't care about your happiness. It doesn't care about love. It cares about one thing, getting your genes into the next generation in the highest possible position. This is called life history theory, and it explains everything. When resources are scarce, women look for men who can provide food, shelter, protection, basic survival. But when resources are abundant, when survival is guaranteed, something shifts. Women start optimizing for status instead, not wealth. Status. The two are not the same. Consuelo Vanderbilt had unlimited wealth. She could have married Winthrop Rutherford and had unlimited wealth plus love plus compatibility. But wealthy American wasn't the top of the hierarchy. Duke was. Evolutionary psychologists call this status hypergamy. It's the drive to pair with the highest-ranking male available, because in ancestral environments, high-status males had better access to resources, better coalition support, better protection. Their children survived more. Their children thrived more, and that preference is still in us. Research shows that high socioeconomic status women weight status 2 to 3 times higher than provisioning ability when choosing partners. When you've already got money, you're not looking for more money, you're looking for rank. For the Gilded Age heiresses, titles were the ultimate rank signal. Dukes outranked everyone, earls were second tier, barons were acceptable but not ideal. And here's the uncomfortable part. The mothers understood this instinctively. Alva Vanderbilt wasn't being cruel. She was being strategic. From an evolutionary perspective, she was maximizing her genetic legacy. Her daughter's marriage to a duke meant her grandchildren would be aristocrats. Her bloodline would merge with British royalty. That's not oppression, that's optimization. And it worked. Consuelo's great-great-granddaughter is Princess Diana. Alva Vanderbilt's genes are in the British royal family, 60 to 80% maternal coercion rate. That's not a bug. That's a feature. That's mothers enforcing the evolutionary strategy that their daughters' emotions might reject, but their genes require. The daughters wanted love. The mothers wanted legacy. The mothers won. Consuelo traded $85 million for a coronet. What are you trading for a blue check mark? Because here's the thing. This never stopped. It just changed currency. Aristocratic titles are scarce now. But social media metrics? Those are the new hierarchy. Instagram followers, TikTok verification, Twitter blue checks. These are the modern status signals, and women are still optimizing for them. Look at modern elite pairings, tech billionaires marrying Instagram models, athletes marrying influencers, CEOs marrying celebrities. These women aren't choosing the richest option. They're choosing the highest status option. A billionaire venture capitalist might have more money than a B-list actor, but the actor has visibility, coalition access, social proof. That's the modern duke. And research backs this up. Studies on dating app behavior show women consistently swipe up in status hierarchies. Education level, job prestige, social proof. These matter more than income once you hit a certain threshold. 47% of women on dating apps report looking for someone to sweep them off their feet with experiences and exclusivity. That's hypergamy language. The mechanisms are identical. Then, titles signaled ancestral dominance and coalition access. Now, follower counts signal social proof and network leverage. Then, mothers enforced matches for lineage elevation. Now, social algorithms amplify status seeking through validation loops. Then, dollar princesses suffered, but their bloodlines won. Now, predicted 70% of elite pairings show same dissatisfaction rates, but evolutionary payoff remains positive. The technology changed, the biology didn't. Your brain is still running the same calculation. Consuelo's brain ran in 1895. What's the highest status I can access? And you're paying the price. Consuelo Vanderbilt cried on her wedding day. She lived in a loveless marriage for 26 years. She wrote a memoir called The Glitter and the Gold, where she confessed she wanted to die. And you know what else she wrote? That the coronet gave her entry where millions failed. That being the Duchess meant something no amount of money could buy. She divorced the Duke. She kept the title. She used it to dominate New York society for the rest of her life. Her great-great-granddaughter. Princess Diana. The women won. Not happiness, not love, not partnership. They won the game evolution is actually playing. Highest possible position for their bloodline. Permanent. heritable, unstoppable. The transaction worked. And here's the part that should terrify you. You're running the same trade right now. Every time you swipe left on someone stable for someone high value. Every time you care more about where someone went to school than whether they make you laugh. Every time you optimize for status over connection. Your biology doesn't care about your happiness. It cares about winning, and it's been winning for thousands of years. The only question is, are you making the trade consciously, or is it making you? So let me ask you this. If Consuelo Vanderbilt could see your dating profile, your Instagram feed, the person you're chasing right now, would she recognize the coronet you're trying to buy? And what are you paying for it? Drop your answer in the comments. What status am I chasing without realizing it? Have I rejected someone stable for someone higher? What's my personal Duchess title? Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. If you want to understand the evolutionary games running beneath every relationship, every choice, every transaction you make, hit subscribe. Because the next game we're exposing, it's the one men are playing, and it's just as ruthless. The transaction never ended, it just changed currency. We'll see you in the next one.